Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome.
Okay.
So today, we're going deep into the world of AI.
Okay, cool.
But not just any AI, we're talking multi-agent artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's this idea of like a team of AI agents, all specialized, working together.
Yeah, like a little AI squad.
Exactly. And the star of our show today is a system called SIRIUS.
SIRIUS. Interesting.
We're basing this deep dive on a research paper, pretty dense stuff, called SIRIUS Self-Improving Multi-Agent Systems via Bootstrapped Reasoning. Ever heard of it?
I have, actually. It's a fascinating look into how AI systems could, well, basically self-improve.
That's what caught my eye, too, this idea of an AI that gets smarter just by working on problems.
It's a game changer if they can pull it off.
For sure. So from what I skimmed, SIRIUS is tackling all sorts of stuff, like reasoning problems, kind of like you'd see on a standardized test. They've even got it trying to answer complex biomedical questions.
Wow.
And get this, they even threw in competitive scenarios, things like negotiating a price.
Now that's getting closer to how we use our own intelligence every day.
Right. So before we get too deep, I got to ask, what really stood out to you about this research?
You know, it's this focus on building AI systems that collaborate. It's like, instead of trying to make one AI that can do it all,
Right.
they're creating these systems where different AIs bring their own strengths to the table, like a real-world team.
That's a great analogy. So it's less about a lone genius and more about like an AI brain trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what kinds of problems are they throwing at SIRIUS to see if this teamwork approach really works?
Well, they didn't hold back. They gave it those reasoning problems you mentioned, like you'd find on an SAT or something.
Okay, classic brain teasers.
Then they really upped the ante with these super intricate biomedical questions, stuff that even experts would find challenging.
And don't forget the price negotiations.
Oh, yeah, that too. It's like they wanted to see if SIRIUS could handle not just solving problems, but actually strategizing and interacting in a competitive environment.
So basically, they put it through AI bootcamp.
Haha, pretty much.
Okay, color me intrigued. So how does this SIRIUS system actually work? Walk me through the nuts and bolts.
Well, it all starts with something called an experience library.
Experience library. Sounds fancy.
It is, in a way. Think of it as a massive database.
Okay.
Every time SIRIUS successfully solves a problem, it stores the winning strategy in this library. It's like building a playbook of proven tactics.
So it's learning from its wins, like building on past successes. Makes sense. But how does it even know which strategies work in the first place? Like, how does it analyze its own performance?
Ah, good question. That's where the bootstrapped reasoning comes in.
Bootstrapped reasoning. Gotta love these AI terms.
Imagine you're learning chess, right? And after every win, you go back and analyze your moves. You're trying to spot the patterns, the strategies that led to victory.
Okay, so it's like reviewing game tape.
Exactly. SIRIUS does something similar. It constantly analyzes its successful attempts, extracts those winning strategies, and then tries to apply them to future problems.
That's clever. So it's constantly learning and refining its approach based on experience.
Exactly. It's always evolving.
I'm already seeing the potential here, but let's get specific. You mentioned they tested SIRIUS on all kinds of tasks. Let's start with those college-level physics and chemistry problems. How did they even set that up? Did they just, like, hand SIRIUS a textbook and say, go nuts?
Not quite. They really wanted to push the whole teamwork aspect.
Okay.
So within SIRIUS, they created these specialized agents, each with a specific role to play. Like you'd have a physicist agent, a mathematician agent,
Oh, I see.
and maybe an agent that's really good at summarizing information, just like putting together a dream team for a science project.
So they're simulating a real-world collaborative environment.
Exactly. Which, as it turns out, made a huge difference in how well SIRIUS performed.
How so?
Well, they found that having these specialized agents working together
Actually led to better results than having one single AI trying to handle everything.
So even in AI, teamwork makes the dream work.
It seems so.
Fascinating. It really highlights the power of diverse perspectives, even in artificial systems.
It really does.
Okay, I got to hear more about these competitive scenarios like the price negotiation stuff. But first, I need a quick refill. Okay, I'm back and ready to dive back into these competitive scenarios you mentioned. Price negotiations, resource exchanges, it's all starting to sound less like AI research and more like an episode of Shark Tank.
Well, they're definitely pushing the boundaries here. They really wanted to see how SIRIUS would handle situations that demanded more than just crunching numbers or solving equations.
Right, because in the real world, intelligence isn't just about finding the right answer. It's about strategy. It's about understanding the motivations of others.
Exactly. It's about navigating complex social dynamics. And those are all things that have traditionally been really tough to teach AI systems.
So how did they even begin to test something like that? Well, they set up a series of games, specifically designed to test SIRIUS's ability to strategize, negotiate, and compete against other agents.
Okay, so game theory for AI. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a fascinating approach. And it allowed them to observe how SIRIUS's strategies evolved over time. Did it lean towards cooperation or competition? You know, how effectively could it actually achieve its goals?
It's almost like they were trying to study the development of an AI personality.
In a way, yeah. They were interested in seeing how its behavior changed as it interacted with other agents and gained experience in these different game scenarios.
So what kind of games do they use? Give me some examples.
One example was a resource exchange game. The basic idea is that SIRIUS had to learn how to trade resources with other agents to maximize its own gains.
So like AI bartering.
Exactly. It had to figure out, okay, what resources do I have? What do I need? And how can I strike the best deals possible?
Sounds like Econ 101 for AI.
Right. But here's the thing that really surprised me. SIRIUS didn't always resort to these cutthroat every AI for itself tactics.
Really? So it wasn't just trying to hoard all the resources for itself?
Nope. Sometimes it actually learned to cooperate with its opponents, striking deals that benefited both sides.
Interesting. So it was able to recognize that collaboration could sometimes lead to better outcomes than just pure competition.
It seems that way, which, is a pretty encouraging sign. It suggests that maybe AI systems don't have to be inherently selfish or adversarial.
Okay, now I'm even more curious to hear about the other games they used.
Well, another one that really stood out was the classic ultimatum game.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
It's all about fairness, right?
Right. You have two players. One proposes how to split a sum of money, and the other player can either accept or reject the offer.
And if they reject, nobody gets anything.
Exactly. So there's this incentive for the proposer to be fair, to offer a split that the other player won't reject.
Right, because being too greedy could backfire.
Exactly. Now, when SIRIUS played the role of the proposer, it consistently made offers that were more advantageous to itself.
So it learned to be a bit of a shrewd negotiator.
Yeah, you could say that. It figured out how to maximize its own gains.
But was it being completely unfair? Like making offers that were so low the other player would always reject?
It wasn't that extreme. It seemed to understand that it had to strike a balance. Its offers were usually within a range that a rational player might accept.
So it was learning to balance its own self-interest with the need to avoid getting rejected outright.
Precisely. It was finding that sweet spot,
Maximizing its potential profit while still ensuring a deal was made.
Exactly. Which is, pretty sophisticated behavior when you think about it.
Yeah, it's starting to sound less like a simple algorithm and more like a strategic thinker. Did they test it in any other scenarios?
Oh, yeah. They also had SIRIUS try its hand at a buyer-seller scenario, which felt like a really interesting real-world test.
So like AI haggling at a flea market?
Kind of. In this case, SIRIUS had to learn how to set prices, how to respond to offers, how to negotiate deals, all that stuff.
Basically, they gave it a job in sales.
Pretty much.
And how did it do?
Well, they found that, just like in the other scenarios, SIRIUS was a quick learner.
Okay.
When it played the role of the seller, it consistently set prices that were higher than those offered by the baseline AI they were comparing it against.
So it was learning to drive a hard bargain.
Yeah, but here's the key difference. In the buyer-seller scenario, SIRIUS also had to learn how to respond to counteroffers.
Right, because in a negotiation, you can't just set a price and refuse to budge.
Exactly. It had to learn to adjust its pricing strategy, figure out when to hold firm and when to compromise.
So it was learning to read the room, so to speak, to adapt its strategy based on the behavior of the other agent.
Exactly. And that kind of flexibility and adaptability, that's crucial for success in any kind of negotiation, whether it involves humans or AI.
It's really impressive stuff. But it also makes you wonder, if AI is already capable of this level of strategic thinking, what happens when these systems become even more sophisticated?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It sure is.
It really does make you think, like, where do we go from here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this whole conversation about SIRIUS so fascinating, right? Because it's not just about the technical achievements, it's about what those achievements tell us about the future of AI. And maybe even the future of humanity.
It's a big topic, for sure. And I think it's important to approach it with a healthy dose of, I don't know, maybe cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism.
I like that.
Because on the one hand, you have all this incredible potential for good.
Yeah.
AI could help us solve some of the world's most pressing problems, from climate change to disease.
Right.
But at the same time, there are these legitimate concerns about unintended consequences. Like what happens if we create AI that's so intelligent, it starts to pursue its own goals?
Goals that might not align with our own.
Exactly.
Which brings us to this whole issue of AI alignment, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that the goals of AI are aligned with human values. That's the holy grail, in a way. It's one of the biggest challenges in AI research today. How do we ensure that as we create these increasingly powerful systems, they remain beneficial to humanity? How do we build safeguards to prevent unintended consequences? These are all questions that we need to be grappling with right now.
It's a lot to think about. But before we get too lost in existential dread, I want to circle back to SIRIUS and the research we've been discussing. Because it's easy to focus on the what ifs, right? The potential dangers of super intelligent AI.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that this research is also giving us some really valuable insights. It's helping us understand how AI systems learn, how they adapt, and how they might evolve in the future.
It's laying the groundwork for a more responsible and beneficial development of AI.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what would you say is the key takeaway here? What should our listeners keep in mind as they navigate this increasingly AI-driven world?
I think the most important message is that AI isn't this distant, futuristic concept. It's already here, it's evolving rapidly, and it's having a real impact on our lives. And as we move forward, we need to be having these conversations about AI alignment, about ethics, about the kind of future we want to create with this technology.
Because it's a future that we're all shaping, whether we realize it or not. So to our listeners, keep asking questions, stay curious, and engage in these conversations. Because the future of AI is, well, it's up to all of us to decide